Hi guys, so my name is Ricky. I'm in Los Angeles at the moment, and just give you a little bit of a backstory. So I was in an event production, and my year pretty much ended up going right on its head, as you would imagine. Everything got shut down, and was looking for new opportunities and ideas and things to occupy my time. And I started wondering about the possibility of just jamming with friends online. I couldn't really find anything very good. And so one of my friends decided to make something. So we made this software and we went online and we all jammed together and it seemed to work. I'm like, oh, this is quite cool. I wonder why nobody's really done this before. And so I started delving into it a little bit more. And so I just kind of wanted to have like an open discussion on the subject and like kind of the future of online musical collaborations, where it's going, what it would mean for like the greater musical community. So I'm just going to touch on a few small things. I'm going to touch on like a little bit of the back history, kind of where we've come, where we are now, what technology is available, what innovation is happening, and what is possible moving forward. So when you talk about musical collaboration online, it's kind of a live collaboration between different people from different parts of the world. The big issue and the big reason why it's never worked so far is latency, which is something you can't really get around, which is the time it takes for the information to travel from one point to another. So I'm speaking, the sound goes through my computer to a server somewhere, it gets linked to your computer, comes out as my voice. And via platforms such as Zoom, that process would take anything from like 0.1 to 0.15 seconds. If I was talking in a room, my voice would travel at about 1 millisecond or 1,000th of a second for every ruler length, so about 30 centimeters. So what is an acceptable amount of latency when you want to be playing music with each other so that you don't experience a lag, so that you can actually play in time? And so the rough gauge for that, the threshold for where you wouldn't be able to notice, is about 30 milliseconds or 10 meters distance from each other. Anything over that, it becomes very difficult to actually play in time with each other. And so for that reason, things like Zoom make it pretty much impossible to actually do this, mainly because they're just not configured with that idea in mind, and also because they favor one-way communication. So as soon as two people start talking over each other, it has a slight cutout, and so that makes it very difficult to actually play together. So just kind of, people have been thinking about this, how we can make this a reality for quite a long time. Back in the 1950s is when people started playing with the idea using radios, and they actually put together orchestral pieces, tapping into different frequencies from different radio stations. The only true remote collaboration ended up happening in the 1980s using satellite links. They managed to create a latency of about 300 milliseconds, which is way too high, 10 times higher than what you would want it to be. But they were able to kind of do something. And then 11 years later, they managed to get that down to about 200 using the modern day internet. And that was from East Coast to West Coast of the United States. And then in 1996, they managed to more than halve that using the same technology, but the big difference was the distance between the 2 points. So St. Augustine in Germany and Geneva, Switzerland, which is only about 700 kilometers away, as opposed to about 4,500 or 14,000 kilometers away. So the distance between the two locations makes a big difference. And then in 1998, at the Winter Olympics in Japan, they did something a little bit differently. So at this point, the technology just wasn't there to create that latency desired for real-time interaction. So what they did is they actually purposefully lagged the time from 5 different locations where they had 200 singers. And so they brought that information to the central server and waited for a second before they actually sent it through to the Winter Olympic Stadium, where they synced in with about 2,000 other singers and an orchestra to play together as if in real time. So it was live, but not actually in real time. So it's a clever way to get around it. And that is something that's actually used today. And then there wasn't really much innovation from then until like the early 2000s, when they started like kind of thinking about it again more and started thinking about the technology and also what type of social impact it could have on like the greater humanity and the greater musical community. And then in 2012, you started seeing the first online musical collaboration softwares coming out. And so there are a bunch of these different platforms out there. There's things like Jam and so for sessions, which are real-time platforms where you can actually jam with each other in real time and communicate with each other. Jamulus and Soundjack, which serve a similar purpose, but they're open source software, so you need to have technical expertise to set that up. Ninjam and Jammer use a similar concept to what they did at the Winter Olympics in 1998. It's interval based. So what they do is you record a measure, you send it through to the other person, they play along to that measure, and then that gets sent back, and then it loops like that. So ultimately you're playing the last measure that somebody else played. So it's not exactly real time, so you can't actually talk to each other, but it is live. And then you get interesting apps like Smule, which are not live at all, but they kind of have an interesting way of making you think that you collaborate with each other together. And that's just simply by, it's a karaoke app. And so you have two people singing the same song, and then it syncs those songs together and then displays both of you together, and it kind of jumps between the two as if you were playing together. They've created quite a cool digital community of people who do that. And then interestingly, in the past year, we've had some cool breakthroughs with 5G. And that might actually be a way to solve this issue. I was gonna play a video, but I can't see it. Anyways, they've managed to actually, with 5G, they've managed to get the latency speed down to an acceptable level where you can actually jam with each other and have musical performances with minimal lag. The technology seems to be there. So why is it that pretty much before COVID-19, none of these services were being used? Now that everyone's coped up in their houses, there's a serious demand for this from the musical community. And now some of these platforms are starting to gain a little bit of traction. But pretty much before this, they were all kind of one person run, no funding, not really much was known about them. And from everyone I've talked to, nobody really knew much about any of these platforms. So I was wondering, why is that? So a couple of ideas to why it could be that it's a very high barrier to entry. In order for it to work properly, you need to invest in good hardware. Using just your internal microphone, your internal speakers is not really good enough. You need to have good stereo headphones, a microphone, an interface that is actually set up for low latency, which they usually are not. And then just configuring your audio settings and having a DAW installed on your computer, a digital audio workstation, which a lot of people would not know how to use. Makes it quite difficult to just get through the door. Secondly, they're just quite unreliable. There are many factors that involve latency, and it not only depends on your equipment that you're using, your internet connection, what computer you have, but it also depends on all of those factors for the person that you're jamming with. If yours is perfect and theirs isn't, you're going to have a problem. So sometimes the services work, sometimes they don't. And for a consumer, we don't like that. We want things to work as you say they're going to work all the time. So out of all of the platforms that I listed before, the one that works the best is actually Smule, which is, funnily enough, is the one that isn't real time at all. And that's because it's reliable, because it's super simple, and it doesn't actually require latency. So it's just always on point. And so for all those other applications, it's just not as good as being in a room with somebody else jamming along. It's also the technology hasn't been quite there for video communication. Even in the 5G videos, the video is slightly delayed. So even if the audio is perfectly in sync, the video isn't quite there. And then another reason why they might not have been working is they didn't seem to be very sustainably structured. So there wasn't really, there was no cash flow within these businesses. They kind of all seemed to be very community based, and like donation based or open source. And in that sense, there was no real capacity to expand and develop this technology further. And then maybe one other aspect was just maybe too soon. maybe 2012, the technology just wasn't quite there. They started off with a lot of enthusiasm and, some funding. And then, it's kind of, they came up with all the problems listed above, and they just burnt out, ran out of funding, and crashed. And people saw that and just didn't try it again. So now I kind of just want to open things up for a discussion on this, because I'm not an expert on it, but it's something that interests me, and it's something that I'm looking to delve into more. And so I kind of just want to look at kind of what is possible in the future, knowing what we have right now. What could we achieve, and what could it mean for the future? Is 5G the answer? Will that reduce the latency speeds by 100%? And then allow us to actually jam together, or is that all a marketing gimmick? How do we lower the barrier to entry? How do we make it so people don't have to, invest in loads of hardware, and have to download all sorts of softwares and configure things, and how can we make that? How can we make the process easier for people, for your average musician? Is VR something we can look into? That feeling of actually being in a room with someone, being able to see their hands and what they're playing, and the rhythm and the mood. How far are we away from that becoming a reality? And then how can it affect things like live performances, like having one performer on a stage with 5 screens with his band, playing from different parts of the world, band practices, people not having to lug all their gear around, spending time and money to go to a location, renting studio space to practice. It makes it much more accessible and open for people. And then the same thing for choir sessions, and just fun things like karaoke as well, bringing people together. And then things like music lessons and workshops, expanding our knowledge base, making those things more accessible to people. Production, that would be something quite far away, because it requires a very low latency to get it to a standard that a producer would want. But that could be something that could be revolutionary in that field. And then just community building, actually kind of linking people together on this digital platform so they can actually meet in the real world and collaborate properly, which is just always seems to be a very difficult thing for most musicians, especially if you're an aspiring musician and not super experienced. It lowers that barrier to entry quite significantly and can help build that community. So yeah, I just kind of want to, that's pretty much the gist of it, just to kind of explain what I'm thinking, where my head's at, and kind of want to just open it up for discussion and see what you guys think, and see if there's anything there. Is this still too soon? And yeah, what do you guys think? Anybody have any thoughts? Any questions?
This is Michelle. How are you guys getting people together or building the community?
Building the community. So what I was thinking actually would be an interesting approach for this is because there's that obvious benefit of if you're actually physically closer to each other and physically closer to your server, you get a much better latency speed. So actually setting it up kind of, as I was calling it, kind of like the Tinder of music apps. So you actually link together with people in the same city. And in so doing, you're actually engaging with people that you could physically meet in real life, because they could literally just be around the corner. And then a nice positive spin-off of that would be that you're actually just physically close to the server, therefore your latency speed is going to be much less. And from what I've experienced, it's much easier to meet someone in a digital capacity than actually in real life. So it cuts through a lot of the psychological games of trying to get your foot into the musical industry, or even just finding people to jam with and have fun with is something that a lot of people struggle with greatly. So I think doing that could that could be a good avenue for kind of a two for one approach, cutting the latency and being able to bring people together.
Awesome, thank you.
I just thought the presentation was really interesting. I think that's part of the aspects that we have to figure it out, how to make it work. I think I'm just wondering, how do you think people are reacting to it? Like, generally speaking, people that are actually entering online concerts or online jams, are people actually into it? Because for what I feel, I think it's a bit for what I've been seeing more impersonal, the interaction. Um, but yeah, with the platform that you're suggesting, this could work, this could change. But I just wanna know your thoughts about that. How are people reacting to it? Are people getting into it?
Yeah, interestingly enough, like I haven't found them to be very nice at all. Like those type of platforms, like a live concert online, doesn't really do it for me. It's very unengaging. But the thing about it is, yeah, that's just one group of people in one room playing a video to you. You might as well be watching YouTube. And so, yeah, I don't think that's very good at all. But what could be cool is, just touching on like virtual reality here, is if you could actually, like, create that two-way communication, have the microphones open on all of the participants in a virtual reality situation. You have your crowd, you have the people on stage, they engage, and they can engage with the stage. They'd be like, everyone scream, and you just hear everyone screaming at their computers, and then it can go through, and it actually makes you feel like you're in a live concert situation. I don't know how far away we are from that. I don't really know that much about VR, but this is just kind of an idea that's popped into my head, of where that could potentially go and how we could make that a lot better. And then, yeah, so does that answer the question?
Yeah, well, yeah, basically, but yeah, I guess it will work differently in a VR environment. It could be a whole more engaging. You could go to the activity with your friends or whatever, and go together. So yeah, hopefully, just we'll have to see how it develops, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and so this would more be about like kind of personal collaboration between like two or more people, like actually being able to, like, get a group of musicians together. You're in Boston, other person's in Buffalo, the other person's in wherever. It's hard for you to get together personally, and so this way you can actually play with each other more frequently, and in so doing, we just get better musicians. We have more people engaging with each other. We have a community that's building more. And then for things like workshops and musical education, it makes it so much more accessible to such a more wide variety of people. All you need is ultimately your own instrument, and you can literally just do a lesson with the best guitar teacher around on the other side of the world. This is thinking in the future, when that technology is readily available. But even just being able to be in your own home and have a Skype conversation, or a whatever platform this would become, have a session with your teacher who lives half an hour away. He doesn't have to drive to you. You don't have to drive to him. It just makes it so much easier, so much more accessible, and so much more flexible in terms of timing. Anybody else have any thoughts? Anybody tried out any of these applications? Any musicians? any new ideas of how this type of technology could be applied. I was actually on a call about an hour ago with a woman who was talking about remote sound healing, and like, sound bowl sessions and things like that would be very easy to set up digitally, because they don't really require very good latency, because you don't have to be in time at all. So things like remote sound therapy healing could be a thing that this could be used for, probably immediately. Like, the technology is completely there for something like that. I'm actually in the process now of putting together a rough draft of an application to do this, make it better. So if anyone is a musician and wants to dry run it with me, we're probably going to have a rough draft up next week. So yeah, let me know and I can send you my contact details. Be good to jam.
I have a friend. We were a few of our friends were having a Zoom hangout. We call it salon because we just talk about all kinds of random stuff. And we happened to talk about music because one of our friends who works at Intel basically plays instruments. And he said that through Zoom, people are kind of coming together and starting like just kind of like a band-like thing. And he said there was like some kind of website where you could kind of join, participate. And it's like an online concert kind of thing. And it sounds really cool.
I would like to investigate into that. Yeah, that does sound cool. If there's like,
Awesome.
if there's some sort of like interactive concert where that works, that's amazing. I would definitely like to know more about that.
Yeah, reach out to me on Instagram, and he follows me on my Instagram like AR account, and I will connect you.
Brilliant. Can you pop it in the chat?
Sure. Chat. Yeah, just send me a message there, and I will link you to the friend.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I've got a few minutes left, so I thought maybe I'll just share a video I found from last year of using 5G to create a musical collaboration, with the idea in mind of, it was done by a nonprofit who wants to do kind of like free music lessons for people. And so and with the idea of making this more accessible to a wider range of people.
Drinking it all of the sunshine, reminding ourselves that there's no time. Wander around in the cold. Learn how to play.
Yeah, so I thought that was just pretty cool. There's been like 2 or 3 initiatives that I've seen using 5G that managed to make that work. And I don't know if you notice that the video is actually still not in time. It's still a little bit off. So yeah, still a fair amount of work need to be done before we can make that something truly perfect. Yeah, I think that's, if nobody else has anything else to say, I think that's me. All right, cool guys. Thanks for listening. Yeah, I'm going to be off. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next chat box. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
Mhm.